Hello, it's time for Combat Patrol Carnage. So we're back with issue 21 and it's lore time, and it's all very focused on the Aeldari and the mystical dimension known as the Warp, as we look at the Immaterium and how the Imperial ships travel through it. And to finish off, we also have a short story all about the Aeldari. So before we hit the table and do our reading, don't forget to do all the usual. Like the video, subscribe to the channel and drop me a comment down below. I love hearing back from you guys, and it goes a massive way to helping out the channel as well. Finally then, Combat Patrol Carnage is proudly sponsored by warbay.shop, your one-stop supply for all your hobby needs. They stock everything you need for getting started, so new and used models, hobby supplies, and gaming essentials as well. They're also stockists of Combat Patrol magazine and previous partworks from Hachette. So check them out, there's a link in the video description for you. Go to warbay.shop, hit other games, hit Hachette Partworks, and hit Combat Patrol if you want to get some extra copies of upcoming issues. Right, let's head to the table and we'll do some reading. Here we are then, back with issue 21. Our Farseer is all ready to face off against some termagants in battle next issue. We've got our newest playmat there as well. We'll put both those off to the side, because today we are here to look at our lore articles. So on the front cover we can tell we got the look at the Aeldari, the Immaterium, and we even have a short story. So without further ado, I'll adjust the camera and we can dive right on in. Into the magazine we go then, and well, there we go. First off, straight to our first article. So we have a look at Aeldari, the Dwindling Flame. As deadly as they are elegant, a host of Aeldari pushes forward to battle. That's the classic 5th edition Codex cover for those of you who know their artwork. And yes, shows a beautiful Samhan war host with an Autarch, Wraith Lord, couple of Wraith Lords even, Guardians, plenty of Warlocks, different aspect warriors, and all their grav tanks in the background as well. The Aeldari are one of the earliest known spacefaring species, but now they stand on the brink of extinction. After countless millennia holding sway over much of the galaxy, they are now a hunted people, relying on their ancient wisdom, their strength, and their powerful technology to fend off the many threats to their existence. The Aeldari are an ancient and proud people who have beaten the odds to survive to the present day. They are kept safe by the bravery and fortitude of their warriors, the skill and wisdom of their seers, and the superiority of their technology and weaponry. Now a scattered people, many of the Aeldari live aboard craft worlds, gargantuan ships containing entire self-sufficient civilizations, each one with its own unique culture and history. Not all of the Aeldari live aboard craft worlds, and some can be found in pockets of the webway, an alternate dimension full of labyrinthian pathways, while others live as pirates and corsairs. In a galaxy of untold terrors, the few Aeldari who have survived to the present day are focused on maintaining the fragments of their once great civilization. Key to their way of life is the storage of the souls of their dead. For not only does this provide them with a well of psychic energy, it prevents the souls from being lost to the powers of chaos that haunt their species. Advanced technology. The Aeldari see their technology as an extension of nature itself, and it is created to psychically interface with the Aeldari who use it. Constructed from advanced psychoplastics and an organic substance called wraithbone, every piece of Aeldari armor and weaponry blends with their user as though it or alive itself, blurring the distinction between biological and technological devices. It is so advanced that no other species has ever been able to replicate it. Aeldari at war. The unmatched elegance of an Aeldari army has tricked many enemies into underestimating their deadly capabilities. In battle, they move with shocking speed. Winged troops descend from the sky as flying tanks and bikes soar through the air toward the foe. Meanwhile, merciless constructs march indomitably towards the front line, supported by elite and agile infantry. Foresight and fury shall deliver your doom. So there we have it. That's our first look at the Aeldari. Moving on, we have a look at the Immaterium. Ships of the Imperial Navy head deeper into the warp, riding the unstable currents towards a distant destination. The Immaterium is both essential and deadly to the many species of the galaxy. Amid its hellscape, ships, information, and pure psychic energy can be relayed across vast distances. But the Immaterium holds many terrors too. Long have many of its secrets been lost, and those who dare use it risk death and madness at every moment. The Immaterium, often called the Warp, is an alternate dimension that sits alongside real space. It is an arcane place of peril and terror, and although it is used for travel and communication, its true nature is little understood by humanity. The warp is filled with roiling energies and raw emotion that are drawn from the mortal beings that inhabit real space. Some species, like the Tau, have barely any of this psychic energy at all, whereas others, such as the Aeldari, have colossal psychic potential and can both draw and contribute huge amounts of energy. But the warp is a real location too, more than just an abstract store of psychic force. Many strange things are hidden within the labyrinthine regions, from lost ships, their crews either mad, dead, or worse, to warbands of Chaos Space Marines. There, they and other beings enthralled to the powers of chaos plot and scheme to expand their domain out into real space, hoping to one day extend the corrupting influences of the warp over the rest of the galaxy. Tides of madness. Warp-capable ships are able to punch through the thin veil that separates the Immaterium from real space. Once they have crossed the boundaries, they can ride the perilous tides of the warp to their destination, hopefully emerging back into real space on arrival. But the warp is unpredictable, and even the best navigators may steer their ship to disaster. There are many tales of ships getting lost, emerging in entirely the wrong place, or even arriving thousands of years before or after they departed. The voice of the wilderness. Across the vast distance of the galaxy, short-reach communication methods such as voxcasters are of little use. Instead, the Imperium relies on astropaths for sending long-distance messages. Astropaths are specialist psychers who are able to send mental images across interstellar distances by projecting them into the warp to be picked up and interpreted by the receiving astropath at the message's destination. What dwells within? Amid the swirling energies of the warp live many strange and malevolent entities. Many of these are psychic reflections of the terrors and excesses of mortal beings in real space. Some appear as demons, manifestations of violence, of disease, and of mutation. They hunger for more of the energy that formed them and seek to find and devour the souls of those with psychic potential, adding yet another unwelcome danger to the perils of the warp. Many have braved the warp and lost more than just their lives. So there we go, warp travel. It's quick as a blink of an eye, but it's not always guaranteed to get you where you want to go. Yeah, it's full of dangers, but it's many races' only way of traversing the long breadth and depth of the galaxy. Finally then, before our naming ceremony, we have a little short story called Mind War. The dome of crystal seers was in near silence, as Farseer Yimlwas walked through. Here, at the heart of the Infinity Circuit, stood her forebears, their forms frozen forever in delicate psycho-crystal. It was the eventual fate of all Farseers to be slowly imprisoned in their bodies as they turned to crystal. Then, eventually, their spirits would finally leave their bodies behind altogether to join the Infinity Circuit with the souls of the other dead Aeldari, and the crystal bodies they left behind would become objects of inspiration, focus, or even veneration. A fresh light pierced the air and refracted around the room. It glanced off the crystalline figures and illuminated the wraithbone trees that stretched up into the high reaches of the dome and into the void of open space beyond. Reaching her usual spot, Ymelwas knelt for a while and sank into meditation, allowing the energy of the Infinity Circuit to wash over her. Her mind blended with the psychic energy that welled up, and a vision of foresight swam into her mind's eye. The enemy were getting closer. Each day she reached out and felt their clumsy approach and their bitter drive. But they were too far away still to truly focus on. All she could sense was their malevolent intent and the taint of chaos. She extended her hands and formed her fingers into a sacred symbol, and around her head glowing runes began to dance. They span and whirled until a single one stopped in front of her. She nodded to herself and dismissed the others with a wave, the energy flowing back into the wraithbone around her. In other biodomes nearby, where the wraithbone was similarly exposed, the spirit stones of the dead were laid out. Once they took root, the stored consciousness of the stone's former wearers would pass into the wraithbone and enter the Infinity Circuit. Here they would move forever through the structure of the craft world, neither dead nor alive. A well of potent psychic energy and a source of comfort and guidance to the living. But Ymelwas knew that even the dead could not be guaranteed perfect rest when war threatened, as it did now. She shuddered at the thought, knowing that elsewhere in the craft world the dead were rising, guided by the spirit seers. The souls of great warriors were coaxed out of the circuit and back into their spirit stones, from there to be implanted in constructs of wraithbone. These mighty forms stood silent, grim, and terrible, more than a machine but less than a living being, each one patiently awaiting their moment to join the living in battle, the unquiet dead coming to the aid of their dying people. Ymelwas focused and reached out again. This time she was startled to feel a distinct mind among the foe. A leader, no doubt, perhaps even the instigator, but even if it was a mere lieutenant, it would be foolish to pass up the opportunity to do a little damage to an enemy so exposed. She pushed against his mind, and in a second she knew that she had pushed too hard. The shock of psychic force reverberated painfully around her body. But she rebalanced herself and gritted her teeth, determined to try again. To her surprise, he seemed to have withstood her attack better than she had. She pushed again, but more gently this time, and felt the would-be attacker's mind. He was strong and he was brutal, but he lacked finesse. A Farseer uses their divinatory skills to guide a war host to its destination. His mind was a raging inferno, furious and powerful, but unfocused and uncontrolled. He was not guarded in the slightest, and she could see his intention as plainly as if it were written out for her. He was young, perhaps not on his own terms, but when compared to the wisdom and maturity of the Aeldari, he had the passion and petulance of youth. She wondered whether he would become more dangerous with time. Perhaps he would, or perhaps he would become more cautious, possessed of a hesitance born of bitter experience. But for now she perceived that his wildness was a threat as much as it was a weakness. As she felt further around his mind, He seemed to sense that he was not alone, for all of a sudden she could feel him seeking her out. Quickly she pushed again, and to Ymelwas's surprise, he pushed back, although it must have pained him. They circled each other for a moment, Ymelwas gently probing the enemy's weakness, him lashing out wildly in reply. Then, against her own best judgment, Ymelwas seized his mind and shook it with all her force, feeling the pain reverberate around her and using all of her strength to hold her own mind together. She ripped and tore, rending any semblance of sanity from his mind and turning memory and purpose into a swirling madness. His psychic scream echoed around her own mind before it was abruptly cut off as their connection was severed, and Ymelwas came to, panting on all fours. Slowly, her body aching, she tried to push herself upright, but her arms were too stiff, and she slipped slightly, almost falling to the ground. She tried again, this time carefully levering herself straight. She opened her eyes, and the sights of the dome swam in front of her. What was this? She had overexerted herself before, but not like this. She looked down, and something caught her eye. She held her stiff arms up to the light, and there it was, a faint translucency, a faint sparkle. It was the faintest hint of crystal. A psychic species. The Aeldari are a species with vast psychic potential. Even the Guardian warriors who undertake straightforward battlefield roles are far more psychically attuned than many humans. So much more powerful are those Aeldari who have embarked upon the path of the Seer, they can enter the minds of enemies to turn them to all-consuming madness. Or they can send out blasts of psychic force, rending flesh from bone and breaking vehicles like straw. So there we have it, our first short story focusing on the Aeldari, and it was quite an interesting one. So we had a Farseer obviously seeking out the enemy. Could this be a hint at the story behind our next two combat patrols? Anyway, it is time to name our Farseer. And while normally I'd roll, I've actually kind of looked at this article already and have decided upon her name. So, first off, let's read a tiny bit about the Farseers. Farseers are wise and brave leaders in an Aeldari force. On their craft world, they are senior advisors, providing insight and guidance. On the battlefield, they are formidable warriors who blend powerful divination and with martial prowess, cutting down enemies with their singing spears. So we'd normally roll a d6 getting our name and the background, but I have decided to go for Maurien as my Farseer. So a bit of paper to protect the opposite page. So we'll write this down. So there we have it. In the next issue, we do get a title page, so we'll be doing that next issue. But for now, we can tick off our other deeds. So we've built her, we've painted, and we'll be playing with her in our next video. So I might as well tick that off while we're here. So a little bit of her background. This Farseer is the wisest of their comrades, and their insight is sought by the greatest leaders. So there we go, nice little leader from our Aeldari force. And yeah, so name your Farseer using the table above, either by rolling or picking the name you like best and recording the result below. So yeah, I've chosen. We did this before with the Librarian, and I think I'll be doing it quite often as we go forward. But I do kind of like the randomness as well. Over the page then we have a look at her datasheet. So this is the first of your datasheets for new Aeldari Combat Patrol. The datasheet contains all the information needed for you to use your Farseer in games of Combat Patrol. So we have a movement of 7, a toughness of 3, save of 6+, but a 4+ invulnerable, 4 wounds, 6+ leadership, and a objective control of 1. We've got quite a few ranged weapons. Most of these are psychic powers. So we've got Eldritch Storm, 24 inches, d6 attacks, hitting on 3, Strength 6, -2 and D3 damage. We have a Shuriken pistol, which is an assault pistol, 12 inches, single attack, 2+ to hit, strength 4, -1 AP and 1 damage. And we've also got the Singing Spear, which can be used as a shooting weapon or a combat weapon. So as a shooting weapon, it's an assault weapon with the psychic ability, 12-inch range, 1 attack, hits on a 2+, strength 9, 0 AP, but 3 damage. Finally, the Singing Spear is also a melee weapon, so it's a psychic weapon, range of melee, 2 attacks, weapon skill 2+, strength only 3, so it's a bit more dangerous throwing it than it is wielding it. No AP, but has a mighty damage 3, so if you can get the wound through, it's definitely going to do some damage to your opponents. So this model can only be attached to the Guardian Defenders. So it's a leader, has the Strands of Fate faction word, and has the Fortune ability. So in your command phase, you can roll a d6 on a 2+, select an Aeldari unit within 12 inches as Psyker. Until the start of your next command phase, each time a target attacks that unit, subtract 1 from the wound roll. So yeah, making it harder for the enemy to inflict damage upon your fellow Aeldari. And don't forget, she is always considered to be within 12 inches, so she can even target herself. The keywords: character, infantry, psyker, and Farseer. Faction words: Aeldari. So there we have it. That's our first look at the Aeldari and our first character. So bring her in. I keep calling her her. Most Farseers tend to be female. There are male Farseers, so he could be a male, but I'm going with female for myself. Morian definitely sounds feminine, I think. But yeah, that's just me. So there we have it. Yeah, some nice information we've just covered, looking at the Aeldari and the Immaterium, plus that nice little short story. That's it then for this video. Up next, we get to take our Farseer through her paces in the first battle, as she gathers information upon a world ravaged by the Tyranids. So, all what's left to do is say thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time on more Combat Patrol Carnage. Goodbye.